I am redoing reading reflection number one. My first time doing this, I shared a lot of my opinions and questions I had, so this time I'm just focusing on the prompt questions. So the first prompt question is, how does the dislocation mentioned in the article help us understand disproportionality in discipline for students with disabilities? So overall, it describes disability as being considered a burden, especially within the media, politics, and music, and then how colored students with disabilities are sometimes not even given specific disability diagnosis where white students are. So these colored students who have disabilities are considered emotionally disturbed. Um, so they're treated differently because if they, quote, have this disability, like it's not actually diagnosed. So they put higher surveillance and have like a zero tolerance for like these emotionally disturbed colored students, whereas like with white students who have a specific disability diagnosis, they're more lenient on. So that's like overall what the article was talking about, how those kids who are of color and have a disability are considered um, problems. So like they're watched more and they're definitely disciplined more often than a white student with a disability. So the next question is, how does discipline look different and similar for different groups? So overall, suspension is used usually. I think it mentioned in the Lawson and Skiba article that 95% of in school or out of school suspensions are based on uh, attendance or disobedience or disrespect, whereas 5% is actually for violent reasons. So they're using this um, suspension as a way of dislocating, especially colored students, because they just want to get them out and just kick them out, and they don't want to take the time to learn about these kids or get to know like what's causing them to miss classes or cut classes or why they're being disrespectful or if they're even being disrespectful at all. So it also I also wanted to touch on how um, in the Lawson and Skiba article how colored students were show higher suspension rates and than white students because for colored students they administration or the school has a zero tolerance for colored students, so this means that there's a higher surveillance and higher surveillance on them, and it makes the school to prison pipeline more prominent. And with this being said, this co-construction of failure of just suspending the kids without getting to know them um, leads to this whole school to prison pipeline. So yeah, dislocating them, like it even mentioned how one suspension can lead to juvenile detention because these kids, like that's all they know is being disciplined, and they're being treated as if they're already in prison in these schools by being surveillanced all the time. That that's all they know. So it also talked about the and then it said also similarities in discipline are based on for like colored students is subjective behavior, whereas the LGBTQ community of colored people are just watched more. So like compare that to white students, they don't have to deal with being disciplined as much for these subjective behaviors. More on I think the word is objective. I think like actually them doing something wrong. Um, and the second or the last question is, how does this all relate to classroom management and how this is going to evolve my pedagogical philosophy. So I wrote a little tidbit saying this relates to evolving my pedagogical philosophy by focusing on if I have a racial bias and to address it and to learn about my community before labeling it as a bad school or not. Because in the article, they had the example of Sally and how she was walking over dead bodies to walk to school, and how she never really saw like what the community actually was and was just exaggerating and being a drama queen about everything. So with that being said, I really want to get to know my community, so I just don't automatically label the school as a bad school. And then also another thing that like I got from this article was, unlike the gym teacher mentioned in the article, I want to acknowledge the bad kids and get them on track instead of avoiding working with them, because like I said before, it's important to get to know your students, and it's important to get to know your community, or you're just going to keep walking through as a teacher with this blindfold on, not realizing like what's actually going on, just using your imagination or using the stereotypes to like lead you. So yeah, that's overall what my thoughts are on this article.